This week on the New You Show, Slow Burn, Part 3, Death Note. Hey everybody, welcome to the third part of our episode series, Slow Burn. This is the New to You Show, where we rate, review, and critique the latest, hottest things.
Yeah, like animes and mangas.
Around a water cooler.
And we mispronounce the names of stuff.
Yeah, that's what we're for here. Last week, we talked about I, Claudius. Did I say it
Sure
correctly?
You did.
You got it. Got it.
And the Julian's pick. And before that, our first slow burn was Jonathan Richman. And this
That
week,
Jocko brought.
I've got one. But before we get into that, I'm one of your hosts, John Holt. With me this week,
Julian Cage.
also with us this week,
Keith Vincent.
and joining us as a guest for this series, and who has been on the show before and who we love having here.
Oh, I love being here too. I'm Jocko Farino.
All right. So before we get into what my slow burn pick was, Jules, what was new to you this week?
Well, new to me this week is I had my first cytoscopy.
What? Is that where they find how many thetans you have in you?
I wish. It's when a urologist puts a camera in through your urethra to check out your bladder and stuff.
Cool.
Did they use a
Wow.
3D a VR camera so you can watch it later with your VR system?
I don't know. He instructed me not to look, and I followed the instructions closely.
Oh, my goodness.
Did he have like a very big TV?
Cytoscopy.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's certainly a memorable experience, but not one that I would recommend.
Cytoscope.
Is
Used
it
a
rec-
cytoscope.
He used a cytoscope.
Is it something that's
cytoscopy.
recommended that we should be getting?
No.
Okay, good.
Oh, but it is new.
hope-
It's new. It's not a recommendation.
It's new to me, that's
Yeah.
for sure.
Wow.
And talk about slow burn. For 2 to 3 days after the
Oh, goodness.
procedure.
Wow.
So there you go.
That's
but hey,
wild.
there was nothing weird in my bladder.
Well, thank
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah, except a camera for a little while.
The interesting thing is that you realize like there's no sensors on the inside.
Huh.
Once it gets
A
past a
certain
certain
spot.
point, you don't know
You
it's
don't know what's
then-
going on.
Yeah. You're
All
just
right.
like, I guess it's in there. Yeah, there you go.
Wow.
Well-
That's the lost art of cinematography right there.
Was it outpatient? Like this kind of
I just went to the urologist who was
did his deal, and you walked out
Is there
there?
like a local anesthetic involved, or is just like
nope, it's
Whiskey.
just like, oh, it's gonna hurt a little bit.
is there like some sort of like device that holds things steady or something?
I
While
don't know.
the
I
feeding
I
through?
was
You said do
staring at
not
the
look.
ceiling. I was staring at the
wow.
ceiling and breathing heavily.
Did the you get to keep the footage at all?
I don't think anything was recorded. I think he just checked it out.
Man, for
He
that
was just
they should've-
periscoping it.
Yeah.
Man, that VR ride would have been sweet.
Inside the human body.
Look out! There's a corpuscle.
You'll be excited on the excitoscope. Excitoscopy.
But man, on top of that, this doctor is like, he's like a New York caricature. Like he's like, kind of nervous, talks too much, talks loudly, asks you questions about random things. Like we spent half the thing talking about my doctor and how she charges for things, and I'm like, why are we talking about this? I don't know. But I think it works, because then all of a sudden, like, okay, now we're gonna do this weird thing, and it's perfectly normal because I'm already weird, and so you just kind of go with it,
You're just like, buddy, we're in this together.
Yeah. There you go. So that's what was new to me this week.
Awesome. That's great.
It's fantastic.
That's pretty sweet.
Well,
I've never.
thanks
had
for
a
sharing, Julian.
Cytoscopy.
Yeah.
What is that? What is that procedure? So we can put a link so people can see it
To YouTube vids.
in case anybody wants to check it out for themselves.
Yeah, just check it out on WebMD.
Cytoscopy.
Cytoscopy.
Cytoscopy. All right.
Except when Jules does it, it's excitoscopy.
Woo! Ooh, calm down, kid. It's hard to get the camera in there. Oh. Ba-doom-tsh. So, yeah, Jules, thanks.
Moving on.
We don't want to get too deep into this topic. I don't yeah, so I guess we'll move into my pick, which is along the same lines.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very
All
similar.
right.
It's just like it.
All right, so my pick is a suspense comic from a Japanese writer, manga writer, who pitched this book to Shonen Jump because there's a lot of action comics. It's like a boys' action comic series, weekly magazine that comes out in Japan. He pitched this series that was a suspense series, and they're like, yeah, all right, we'll give this a go. But he was like, look, it's not going to be a fight show. Like, there's plenty of those. I don't want a fight show.
Fight comic.
It's going to be, fight comic. It's going to be like a suspense heavy thing. And he kind of, his basic concept was he wanted to have interesting way that people got killed. And he also wanted to have these like shinigami, like gods of death in there. Mm-hmm. And a comic artist, manga artist who heard about this project was like, ooh, gods of death, death notes. This will be interesting. Like this notebook that kills people. I want to work on this. And so he got sent the script, and he's like, I don't really get it, but I'll still work on it. And so the two of them paired up, and they actually didn't really work in proximity at all. He just kind of sent him the scripts, and he made the book. And Shonen Jump ran it. It ran from 2003 to 2006. Went 12 volumes. So I think each volume has like 5 or 6 chapters in it, something like that. But it's, all told, if you were to buy it, it got picked up in the U.S. and translated by Viz for North American distribution in like 2005, 2006. And you can get the whole 12-volume set. You can buy it on Amazon. You can, as books. You can also, I think, buy it on Kindle. And the translation's pretty good. It reads like Japanese manga. They didn't flip the art, so you start in the back to us Western readers, where you start you read left or right to left throughout, and the art reads right to left as well. So
each page needs to be read like that.
So there's a little bit of getting used to on that. So that's sort of the backstory on the book. The process of the book. Before I get into that, let me discuss what a slow burn is to me. So I've already slowly burned you into this thing, but I tend to give stuff. This was a hard topic for me. I tend to give stuff the benefit of the doubt when I go into it. So usually it's like if something is bad, I'm either going to muscle through to see how long it stays bad and then get out of it. Like I'm not going in doubting this stuff very often. So there have been times where things that like I'll grow into them or they'll surprise me. But like movies, I watch so many movies that and have been around them enough that I just go in expecting like, look, I'm going to sit down and watch this movie. I'm going to enjoy it or I'm not. And so I always kind of start with like, I'm going to enjoy it for what's in there and then let it disappoint me. If that's what's going to happen, not like basically I'm an easy audience to some degree where I give things a fighting chance. I'm optimistic in that way towards stuff. So with this book, this was one of those ones where I'm at the same time, I will put something away if I don't like it, and I will not start something if there's not a really good draw to it. I'm definitely someone if someone says to me like, you got to try this, you got to do this, it may take me a little while to get around to it, where it's almost like, oh, well, I'm not finding this naturally, so I'll just wait till I get to it and I'll get into it if it's really in my wheelhouse. And this was one where I'd been doing a lot of research for animated series. I was already into Japanese animation and manga, and so I'd been reading a lot of anime or a lot of manga and watching a lot of anime for research and for my own like personal sort of path of exploration. And Death Note was something that was very popular, like extremely popular, and people were recommending it to each other, and it was going back and forth. And it was something where it's like, I don't know, I'll get into it maybe. And then I think we were lent the first copy. I think it was someone at Little Einstein's who was passing around copies, and that may have been how you started reading it, Jules.
Around what year was that?
It was when you were on Einstein's. It was probably like 2004, 2005.
Yeah,
so
sounds about
pretty early in, and that's like early days on like Kappa Mikey, I think too. So kind of early into all that stuff, and the book was going around, and it's a very suspenseful psychological book. So now I guess I can get into what it is. The linchpin is that there's this world of monster ghost gods of death, and they can kill people on Earth by writing down their names in this book, and each of them have one of these books. And if one of these gods of death kills a person, they take what's remaining of that person's lifespan and add it to their own lives, and that's how they exist. That's how they live. But they are kind of bored with. They don't care about humans, but they also like are very lethargic, and they live in a world of waste and decay. And most of them are wasting and decaying. Some will just die because they forget to write down names in the book. And the concept is that one of these creatures, these gods of death, because he's bored, gets his hands on a second book and drops it in the human world to see what will happen, to entertain himself, really. And this boy picks it up, and there are sort of rules written in it by the god of death, and this kid follows those rules, and it says if whoever's name you think, or whoever's name you write while thinking of their image will die either as you specify or within 40 seconds. If you don't specify how, they'll die of a heart attack. So now this kid has this way to kill people just by knowing their name and knowing what they look like. And he's the son of a police officer, which is a little bit of a spoiler for like the first chapter, but he's the son of a police officer, and he has this overinflated sense of justice, and he's a kind of a weird sociopath. And
But he's also like brilliant but bored.
Right. And his name is Yagami Raito, which is light like Raito, light. His character's name is Light, effectively, in the book. And as he starts killing off criminals using this notebook, just these criminals start mysteriously dying, and he's exploring ways to kill. Everyone starts going like, whoa, how are all these people dying? What's going on? People are freaking out. Like, people are magically dying. And
Is it not? They just don't think it's a heart attacks. They don't think it's heart attacks.
Well, it just becomes like such a pattern.
So many.
right. It's like, how are these young people, like relatively young people with no history of heart condition, dying? And then he also starts to declare himself and make his presence known, because that's part of it too, is he wants to create this utopian society with no crime, because everyone's so afraid of being killed that they don't want to commit a crime. So that's his whole like weird thing, but it's self-serving, because he's kind of a megalomaniac. He's crazy.
For sure.
And so as long as he has the book and is in possession of it, he can see the Shinigami and talk to him. And the Shinigami is his own character, so there's this play. And the kid's crazy smart, but to the core flawed and evil, is always sort of trying to stay one step ahead of everyone. And the persona of this killer is called Kira, like killer, the god Kira. So this god of death, Kira, is sort of, some people praise him for killing off criminals. Some people say that, he's a vigilante, he's bad news, he's a killer, he's a homicidal maniac. And so that's when the world sort of calls, or the world leaders sort of call in this super detective, L, who is going to work with whoever he needs to within the FBI or the Japanese police force or whatever to hunt down and find who is the real Kira and find out what his powers are and how he can stop him. And so you end up with Kira / Light hiding from his father, who is hunting for Kira with the help of L, and then they're basically vying against one another, and it's all head games where you'll get someone monologuing and then in their head, and then doing a long explanation to some other guy who's monologuing in his head while the explanation's going on, and then monologues back, and it's all these like intricately woven tales, and it goes on like that for 12 volumes.
And all these different levels of deception and
right,
people pretending to.
So it's like if he does this, then I know that, but if I do this, then he'll do that. Oh, but that's
it's like a chess game, but you're hearing everyone's thoughts.
Yeah, and
it's like
so initially, it's very staid comic. It's very slow building. It's also a little hokey because you have this one character who's just kind of has this like, oh, he has a silly ability and he's going on about the justice that he's going to put on people and the justice, the perfect world of Kira. And it gets a little hokey. So it is a tough thing to get through into the meat of it, because it starts to take some twists, and I spoiled a little bit where even revealing that Light's father is the chief of police, because you've seen this guy who's like, oh, I'm devoting my life and putting my life on the line to hunt down who the real Kira is. I won't stop until he's caught. And then next thing you see, he's like arriving home, tying his shoes, and his son is looming in the background. Yeah. And it's like, oh, and there's tons of great like glaring looks, and all the characters are very fun and weird, and there's like an odd sense of humor that runs through this killer story, and you get hooked eventually, like after you kind of get through the initial probably the first like book and a half. Mm-hmm. You get the tone, you get the pace, and it doesn't overdo it, which is good. It maintains the suspense, it maintains the twists, and it's hard. You aren't really rooting for Light at all, for the Kira kid, but you do want him to not get caught sometimes, because you want to see what he could do next. It's very odd. Like, you're not rooting for his cause. You're not rooting for, you kind of like, you don't care if he gets caught in the end or not. It's more about how he navigates all the people who are trying to find him, who are his match, if not his better.
And then there's also a couple times where the tables turn, and it's fun to see the other side doing the same thing, and et cetera. Right. Like it's definitely like there's a lot of sections in the story that are like real page turners, where you're just like, and it is fun to like kind of watch this the writer like make these puzzles and
work out of them
and all that kind of stuff. But there definitely also are like some, a couple of books that feel like a little padded and things like that. And
yeah, I mean it's a serial work where that he's putting out a week's worth of work to be illustrated per week. So there's every chapter has a recap to the previous page, and there's a level of like reiteration and retheming going on. But yeah, Keith,
well, I think it was originally so when they are Shonen Jump is a magazine that would feature these comics in it, right? It wouldn't be a full comic.
Right. It would be like a
few pages like of this bigger piece.
It's almost like if you bought comic books, like instead of buying a single issue of a comic book, if every week Marvel put out like
Marvel
Spider-Man,
highlights.
X-Men, Avengers, blah, 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 like 7 or 8 books all in one book.
Yeah.
That's what Shonen Jump Weekly is.
Yeah.
And so then when they go to make a graphic novel, that's your like collected volume. They take the pieces out and make one whole chapter.
But I mean, what I was saying is that's I'm certain that's why they're the highlight. I mean, the
oh yeah, that's what you're saying. Like there's there's that serialized aspect to it.
And it would drive me insane to read that story in that fashion.
I have to come out
Do
every
you have to
week.
wait for it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, like, just to get it in those tiny little bites, it would just be really frustrating. I think. I'm really glad I got to read it, like, in larger chunks.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've forgotten that aspect of comic books. We live in a time when that's not really an issue anymore. But
No pun intended.
yeah, well, I mean, I just remember getting a Hellboy, and this wasn't even that long ago. This was in like late '90s, maybe early 2000s. I can't even remember. But I'd just be like, through that one. I finished it that quickly. Like that, they would just read so quickly.
Yeah.
And then it's just like, well, now I'm gonna wait for.
Yeah. And then there were certain indie comics that like would have intermittent starts and stops. Like I feel like Jeff Smith's Bone, had like periods where it just stopped publishing, and you're like, what?
Well, yeah, and then Jeff Smith went on to do Razzle, which was like 4 years in between every issue.
Yeah, I didn't read that one.
So Keith, had you read Death Note before?
I hadn't read it. No, and I didn't. I didn't honestly read much of it this time. I mean, I definitely got a feel for the art, and I instantly recognized it. Being a consumer of mass media, having to do with animation, it certainly was not something I hadn't heard of. But I did. I guess what I was having trouble getting in, that's why it was a slow burn, is you read it and you're like, who do I root for? Like, what am I hoping will happen in this? And there's no answer to that. And so
it takes a little
having
while.
read the whole thing, does it ever get to a point where you're just like, okay, now I know what to hope for at all? I mean, it's not even who to root for. It's
There's
just
some
almost
pretty,
like,
there's
how
some
does
pretty
this
big twists. You kind of go like, wow, this kid is scary smart.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to you want him to get caught because you want to see if anyone can untie the web that he's woven. But you kind of know that he's going to get away with it, possibly. The interesting thing is,
how do you get there?
There are some big twists, and nothing. There's the Shinigami thing, and the good thing is that they don't really introduce many more rules than you have. So the good thing is, like, there's a fantastic element. There's this Death Note, and there are some basic rules to it. Like, you write down a person's name, and part of the story is this kid figuring out these rules too.
Yeah, they kind of introduce a new rule every issue, and that's really fun too.
And not for very long. So like
right, just for a few.
So there's the rule that you can, you write down someone's name, and think of their image, they'll die. But you have to know their real name. If they're using a pseudonym or you don't know how to spell it, so you'll see in the first parts, he's writing down the same name with the different kanji like 12 times just to hit the person.
Why. Okay,
yeah, because you'll see like
translated version. It was just the name over and over again.
And you can kind of see the name written above it, but you have to notice that the characters are different. So it's a tough. If it'd be like, Jocko with a J, Jocko with a GR. I don't know why, but that's
Jocko.
So there's that aspect to it. There's also like if you don't kill someone, or if you write that someone will die in more than like 23 days, they'll die of a heart attack, or they won't die at all, or something. If you put someone in a position where it's impossible for them to, you can write down ways that they'll die. Like he will walk to the store and then have a terrible accident, and so or in 4 minutes. So you can dictate all these ways, all these rules, and control them to some degree. But if you make them do something impossible, like someone's in jail in Japan, and you say he's going to jump in a plane and fly to Paris and jump off the Eiffel Tower, he'll just die of a heart attack because it's impossible for him to get out of jail around the continent in 3 hours. So there's kind of all these rules to play with, but once those are laid in, they don't really introduce more rules. Then it's about how do you negotiate these rules to escape the police? How do you plumb this unknown thing? If you're an investigator and you can't see the ghost monster, you don't know about the Death Note, you just know these things are happening, and you are putting this puzzle together. Those are two giant missing pieces. You don't know the rules. You just have to figure out what the rules are. And once you even know the rules, if you don't know the method of killing, like you could just think they're like using some weird psychic power.
Right.
You don't know,
or poison or something.
Right.
Yeah.
So you don't know like what mechanisms they have, and that's it's scary for everybody involved. Jocko, what did you think of the series?
I really enjoyed what I've read. I read a good sort of chunk of the beginning of this. I'd never touched it before, I was aware in the past of, I guess, just the character of Ryuka. Is that right? Or
Ryuka, the Shinigami
the
with the big.
Shinigami,
He's got a big
yeah.
like Joker grin and these like googly eyes that point in
Right.
different directions.
That was like something that I saw from walking by Hot Topic,
Yeah.
like that type of thing. And so I think I probably unfairly just equated that with like, oh, that's like a younger goth thing. Like in the way that I was into like Johnny the Homicidal Maniac in 6th grade or 7th grade. This is what...
And the art definitely has that aesthetic.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
definitely like a goth aesthetic.
But-
Even though
Or
like
an
the
emo-y kind of.
the
Yeah,
hero
emo-y
L
goth.
has like he's gothic font in his
Right,
name,
right.
and he's got like black eyeliner, or it could be like he doesn't sleep and he's got dark eyeshadow,
Right.
but he kind of has a Robert Smith kind of vibe going on.
Totally. And that the character, especially of the god of death, sort of outside of it as just this mascot, is totally different from it integrated into this world of this comic, which I really like. That in it, it sticks out. It sticks out against what I think are really beautiful illustrations of city, like whenever the artist does city blocks or city life. It's really beautiful looking, and to see this sort of like, it almost looks like cut and pasted in. I think it really works for that, to show how different the worlds are. I definitely get that it's a slow burn because I wasn't on board until L showed up. And then once the super detective L showed up, I was like, I had a moment where I sort of stopped and I said, oh, this is not the story I thought it was at all. Now I'm very, very interested. I went from being like, oh, I get it, it's a cute premise, like why is this thousands of pages long, to oh, okay, this is like a serial killer mystery, a cat and mouse, which I love. I love that type of media. I love that sort of type of content.
Yeah.
Cool. Jules, what about you? You had read this before, yeah?
Yeah, I think I actually read it at your recommendation, and yeah, I really enjoyed it, and it was fun to dip back into it and just be reminded of all the twists and turns, and it was also it's also been fun to see all the different permutations of it, because it was a manga and then it was adapted into an anime, and there was also a live action film adaptation, and it's always fun to compare those things. And but I still would recommend the manga over everything else. Just the way it was originally conceived, it's kind of hard to translate a little bit. I mean, I have that issue with even Ghost in the Shell, because it's a very talky, heady thing, and the action is really just like to have some pictures to look at. Right. And I thought it was kind of strange that it was made. I mean, it's a beautiful anime, and they are beautiful pictures to go along with it, but the pictures and the actual story are so like separate. It's bizarre. And I kind of feel a little bit like that about Death Note, but I think there are a lot of things that were kind of a little slow burny about it. I think, like you said, it just takes them. They just take their sweet time, kind of.
Right.
The story itself is a slow burn.
Yeah,
even regardless of your stance on it, it's a slow burn. Just the way it's presented.
Yeah, and it's very it introduces things in a very methodical, slow way, but it really pays off, and it's fun. It's fun once you get into it, but also like the art style was also a little something that I kind of had to get into. It's like not my favorite.
It's very like traditional manga character art.
Kind of stereotypical. So if you're not into that, you kind of have to look past that as well. But so much of it is about the writing and just people's thinking that you quickly can get past that. I think.
Yeah, that's a good point. Now that I think about it, almost every page on the right-hand side is that very classic manga, like 5-panel of like a top long panel, and then like I don't know, just the breakdown.
Very traditional.
The block, and then the 2 smaller ones, and then a longer one on the bottom to cap it.
Yeah, everything is paced very deliberately and very standard. And I'm pretty sure he put thumbnails to his script to provide the artist like pacing, which is standard for manga writers. It's well balanced. It's a good example of mainstream Japanese manga, which again, it's not a total example because a lot of the Shonen Jump stuff is fight stuff, like your Narutos and your One Pieces and that kind of stuff.
I
you
think
get
that's
a lot
why
more
this
boy
one
fight.
I think that's why this one kind of stands out and has been recommended a lot more.
Yeah.
And only lasted 3 years. That seems actually kind of like a
Yeah.
short run for a very successful manga, right?
12 issues worth is a
Okay.
pretty big
Okay.
like
Volumes?
Yeah,
Or
12
issues,
volumes. So, if it's what like we won't do the math, but basically within 3 years you're doing a volume a season basically.
Right.
And so that's every 3 months. Yeah. So it's like 4 chapters.
It's a
or
ton
so.
of work.
Yeah.
I was under the impression, and maybe I'm totally wrong, that like One Piece or Naruto is like still happening.
Oh yeah, definitely. Those
So
are
those are like blockbusters. Like
those are huge.
like your Dragon
like,
Ball that was
yeah.
going on for 2 decades.
Decades, yeah.
And I mean, in some ways, I'm glad that it's a finite thing, but I also think it's the type of story. It would have been really hard to like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was hard, I think, to keep it going as long as they did. I would have liked it a little bit shorter, I think, but I'm glad that it's self-contained and you can.
They're also copycat and imitators.
What?
Yeah.
Of that series?
Yeah, well, like there was a Belgian murder where they found like
Oh,
No way.
Wait, in real life, you're saying?
like they found written on a couple notes like poorly Roman alliteration of I am Kira, and it was called the like manga murder in Belgium.
wow.
And then there have been like
I
instances.
thought you meant like shows in comics that were ripping off this concept.
No, like kids, like where they'll find a kid who has a death note at school with like parent and like teacher and student names and like plans. I'm gonna blow up the school and here's the bombs I'm gonna use. So there's this sort of like trench coat
Life
mafia
imitating
style.
art. Yeah.
It
Weirdness.
appeals to kids smart kids who think they're smarter than everyone
Right.
else,
And also feel alienated all the time already.
And have a strong sense of justice.
Hey, just on a side note, the concept of the death gods, is that a common thing that you've ever seen, or is this
Shinigami.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's part of
Yeah,
the
it's-
folk
this is like a
the Japanese
Shinto-
folklore.
Yeah.
I've never heard of it. It's interesting.
It's like a reaper would be like
Yeah.
the translation. Yeah.
I don't know when it came out in relation to this, but there's another manga and anime about these Grim Reapers in training.
Is that Soul Reaper?
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
so,
that's more recent.
Yeah.
Than that, but that's also in a weekly Jump kind of thing. That's a little more of a fight, like fun show too.
Yeah. It's
It's
got
good.
everything. It's like Hogwarts, except you're training to become Grim Reapers,
Yeah.
and your companion is your like Reaper weapon, which some of them is like, for some of them it's like a gun, and for some of them it's all these different weapons.
And Bleach, if you know that series, they're also Reapers in that.
Oh, I didn't
really?
know that.
Yeah,
I
there's-
guess I didn't pay enough attention to that.
He's like one of the few who is still like the
the
whole
kid with the baseball bat.
No, it's like a kid with a giant, long, pointy sword, and he's got like spiky. I mean, I just described like 6 things. He's got a giant sword, spiky hair.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I know that one.
Yeah. No, this is one. It's called Bleach. He wears like a very traditional garb.
For some reason, I associate guitars with Bleach. Is that?
No,
No,
you're thinking
Bleach is
of
the one where
Beck.
the kid has the baseball
Beck,
bat.
another
That's
big
Paranoia
one.
Agent.
Oh, okay.
They all blend together.
Bleach has a big old sword, and all the people have like different swords that are extensions of themselves as like a soul thing. But for the most part, they're sort of a veil between the world of the living and the world of the dead. And in the center of this world of the dead are these samurai type characters who have soul swords, and they're the Reapers. They're kind of like their scythes, but they're like various types of swords, and or like katana, whatever weapons that they have. This boy who's alive gets access to this ability and sort of bridges the gap, but he's super powerful. It's a standard like fight kind of thing where he has an untapped potential and he trains up real good, and there's all
He's
these
got to collect them
rules.
all.
And they fight these things called hollows, which are souls who have like lost their way and like have big holes right here in the middle of their chest, which I'm circling. And so they become monsters. They're like consuming the living and coming into the real world. And that's what Reapers are there for, is to take care, like to take souls away, but also to get rid
To
of hollows.
guide them.
Yeah, to eat them. But yeah, so then it's huge, long, twisting. That's one like Naruto that's gone, 80, 90 issues, like, years and years.
Too many.
Bleach has.
Yeah, it's a big one. But yeah, Death Note, that's a good one too.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you're really
thanks for
gonna
bringing
like it if you're 14, or if you have just entered art school, or
You might. That's not.
I think it's
Not
I think
enough
it's
of a
definitely a little
qualifier.
more.
I don't know.
I think it's a little more psychological. Like it's a good, like, magical realism,
Right.
Detective story.
You're going to
suspense
really
story.
like the way it looks if you're those people that
Yeah.
Keith
Yes.
described.
But I think you will like this because it's not as young as your
Right,
Naruto's.
right,
The art skews to it like an older teen, but at least in American sensibilities. But the content is pretty good for adults and probably more appropriate for adults to kind of get through.
Thanks for
So
bringing it.
would
It
you
was
say
great.
that it feels kind of like Dexter?
A little bit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
It's got some parallels. Except
That was what I was getting
except
off of it. It
what
like-
was missing from Dexter was the L character.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a really good.
Instead, they just had to
A
be like,
foil.
well, there'll be another serial killer.
Right. Yeah, it's tough because what you get is a good, like, what if it was Sherlock and Moriarty, but you start with Moriarty and you follow him most of the time. That's kind of what
Whoa,
you get.
dude, you got to write that.
Boom.
It's
It's
done.
done.
Yeah,
I just
Guy
read
Ritchie.
it.
Guy Ritchie's writing that story, the screenplay right
No,
now.
his doppelganger, Rai Gitchie. His reverso man.
Well, thank you, Holt, for bringing it.
Yeah.
I certainly enjoyed it, and I will read more of it.
You better.
I
Yeah,
will.
I think I'm going to finish it.
I'm going to quiz y'all.
Gonna finish the whole thing.
I think so.
It's
And
definitely.
I, Claudius. Nobody come over this week. I'm very busy.
You'll never see your girlfriend again. You'll be
no.
too busy
I'm reading and watching.
and hanging out at Hot Topic.
Well, that's where we met, so that's
Oh, awesome. Perfect. All right. Thanks, gang, for reading Death Note. You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it on the Kindle. There's probably some comic apps that also have it.
Or maybe
And-
go to a real comic book store.
Oh, yeah. They might have it
that?
there still.
They got them. They got them.
何ねんねどころ2つ
けけ俺の勝ちだ悪く思うなよ
おいリュウクお前もやらないかたまには仲間に入れよ
Such a question, there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Feel I'm alone in this.
Thanks, everybody, for sticking in for our third episode of Slow Burn. Next week, we're going to go to
Feel the burn.
the fourth part and final part of our series with Keith's pick. What's your pick, Keith?
It's going to be the 2005 Joe Wright directed film called Pride and Prejudice.
Oh, nice. And zombies?
Nope, just Pride and Prejudice. Just those two things.
Nice.
No
Just-
zombies.
Nope. Yep.
Well, all right.
Yep.
Well, I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me on Twitter at Lord Joho. Keith, where can they find you?
You can find me, Keith Vincent, on Tumblr at earthlingkeith.tumblr.com.
And you can find me at on Twitter at Jocko Farino. And you can find my writing on my clippings site, clippings.me/Jocko Farino. Of all the stuff that I write, tying into this week's episode, every Friday on the Creators Project, I have a comic rundown where I review 4 good comics of the week.
Nice. Very cool. And I'm Julian Cage. You can find me on Twitter at BeautifulJules.
All right. And if you'd like to find more about Death Note or the other topics in our other picks in our slow burn topic, you can go to newtoyoushow.com. You can leave comments there. If you'd like to share the show with people, that'd be great. Let more people know about us. Also, go onto iTunes and rate and review or subscribe through your favorite podcast app. I recommend Overcast. That's my favorite iOS podcast app. It might even be on Android.
Nope.
No, it's not. Well, on Android, maybe Google Play is hosting podcasts.
Maybe by now.
And you should rate and
Give it
review
a
on
try.
there. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter, we're at newtoyoushow.com. No, we're not. God damn. If you'd like to follow us on Twitter, we're at New to You Show. You can leave comments there on our blog or on our Facebook group, New to You Show Facebook group. It is closed, but we will accept you as a member if you are,
If you just try.
politely, like a robot. All right.
But just please don't write our names down
Yeah.
in your notebook.
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, gang. It may not be new, but maybe it was new
new
to you.
Pitiful life is all about the music. This pitiful life is all about the music.
With him together forever, without the limitation of time ever again. So the second coming of the Lord is not